Some people don't struggle because they lack awareness. They struggle because they have too much of it. If you've ever felt like your mind is always on, not anxious exactly, just constantly scanning, reading between lines, noticing what others miss, this video is for you. Highly aware people don't think better, they think differently. And that difference changes everything. How you feel, how you relate, how tired your mind gets, even when nothing seems wrong. You probably noticed this early in life. As a kid, you picked up emotional shifts before anyone said a word. You sensed tension in a room instantly. You questioned things others accepted without thinking, not because you wanted to, but because your mind just did. Highly aware people don't choose awareness. It happens automatically. Your brain doesn't just process information. It processes context, subtext, patterns, inconsistencies. And here's where many people misunderstand you. They assume awareness is always an advantage. They think it leads to clarity, peace, wisdom. Sometimes it does, but sometimes it leads to mental overload, emotional fatigue, and a deep sense of being out of sync with the world. Because when you see too much, you can't unsee it. You notice contradictions in conversations. You feel discomfort when something doesn't align, even if no one else notices. You struggle with superficial interactions, not out of arrogance, but because your mind needs meaning. And this creates a strange paradox. On the outside, you may look calm, functional, even successful. On the inside, your mind is constantly working, connecting dots, anticipating outcomes, analyzing emotional dynamics. You're not overthinking, you're overprocessing. There's a big difference. Overthinking is repetitive and anxious. Overprocessing is continuous awareness without an off switch. And psychology has been slowly catching up to this distinction. Highly aware brains operate with elevated metacognition, the ability to observe one's own thoughts, emotions, and mental states in real time. This isn't something you learn, it's something your nervous system does naturally, which means rest isn't just physical for you, it's cognitive. If your mind doesn't feel safe enough to stop scanning, it won't. That's why many highly aware people feel exhausted even after doing nothing. Their brain was still working, still reading, still adjusting, still anticipating. And the hardest part, most people don't see this as effort, so your fatigue goes unnoticed, unvalidated, sometimes even questioned. You think too much. You're too sensitive. Just relax. But awareness doesn't relax on command. And this is where many highly aware people start to feel isolated. Not because they want distance, but because they don't know how to explain their inner experience without sounding dramatic, intense, or disconnected from reality. So they adapt. They stay quiet. They minimize their perceptions. They learn to function in a world that rewards speed, noise, and surface-level thinking. But inside, something feels misaligned. If this sounds familiar, stay with me, because awareness itself isn't the problem, and neither is your mind. The problem is how awareness interacts with a nervous system that was never taught how to regulate depth. And that's where psychology becomes not just interesting, but useful. In the next part, we'll talk about what's actually happening inside the brain of highly aware people, why awareness often comes with emotional weight, and why many intelligent, conscious individuals struggle more, not less, with inner peace. Don't go anywhere. This is where it starts to make sense. Let's clear something up first. High awareness is not a personality label. It's not a trend. It's not a badge of superiority. It's a processing style. Highly aware people don't just experience life. They monitor it while it's happening. Their brain is constantly running two tracks at once, one that lives the moment, and another that observes, evaluates, and contextualizes it. This is called metacognition, the ability to be aware of your own thoughts, emotions, and internal states in real time. For most people, metacognition turns on occasionally. For highly aware people, it's almost always on. And that changes everything. Your mind doesn't simply react. It reflects, anticipates, compares, and integrates. You don't just feel an emotion, you notice it forming. You observe its intensity. You track how it shifts your behavior. That level of internal visibility is powerful. But it's also demanding. Because awareness requires energy. Highly aware brains show increased activity in systems related to self-monitoring, emotional integration, pattern recognition, future simulation. This means your brain is excellent at understanding complexity, but it also means your nervous system is under continuous cognitive load. Most people rely heavily on autopilot. They move through large parts of the day without actively processing everything. Highly aware people rarely get that break. Their mind stays engaged, not because of anxiety, but because of sensitivity to information. And this is where many people misunderstand themselves. They assume their fatigue means something is wrong, that they're weak, overwhelmed, or emotionally unstable. But often, the issue isn't emotional fragility, it's bandwidth saturation. Your system is taking in more data than it was designed to process without regulation. This is why highly aware people often feel tired after. Social interactions, emotionally charged environments, conversations with hidden tension, situations that lack coherence or honesty. Nothing dramatic happened, but your system worked over time. Your brain wasn't just listening, it was reading tone, intention, micro-shifts, contradictions. And because you're aware of your own internal state, you also notice the cost of that effort more clearly. Another important piece here is emotional granularity. Highly aware people tend to feel emotions with greater nuance. They don't just feel bad or good, they sense layers, disappointment mixed with care, calm mixed with sadness, clarity mixed with grief. That depth allows for emotional intelligence, but it also increases emotional load. You don't skim feelings, you enter them, and when the environment doesn't allow space for processing, those emotions accumulate. This is why highly aware people often try to solve the problem cognitively. They read more, reflect more, analyze themselves deeper. They assume insight will bring relief, but insight alone doesn't regulate the nervous system. Understanding what's happening is not the same as helping. Your body feels safe enough to downshift, so awareness keeps running. This creates a very specific internal experience. Mentally calm, emotionally full, physically tense, you know what's happening, but your system doesn't rest. Psychologically, this is the result of awareness without containment. Awareness amplifies perception, but without regulation, it also amplifies unresolved emotional energy. That's why unresolved experiences feel heavier for you than for others. Why environments affect you more deeply. Why incoherence is exhausting. You're not overreacting, you're processing more layers at once. And here's the critical distinction most people miss. Highly aware people don't struggle because they think too much. They struggle because their system never learned how to pause awareness safely. There was no instruction manual for depth, so awareness stays on guard. Always scanning, always integrating, always preparing. This isn't a flaw. It's a system doing its job without the support it needs. And when awareness lacks support, it turns inward. It becomes self-focused, looping, heavy. But when awareness is supported properly, something changes. It stops collapsing inward. It starts organizing reality outward. In the next part, we'll talk about what actually allows highly aware people to thrive, why trying to be less aware never works, and how awareness, when grounded, becomes one of the most stable and useful forms of intelligence there is. This is where awareness stops feeling like weight and starts feeling like clarity with direction. Here's the part most highly aware people rarely hear, and almost never hear clearly. You don't need to become less aware. You don't need to shut your mind down. You don't need to dull your sensitivity to survive. What you need is support for depth. Awareness itself is neutral. It's neither a gift nor a burden. It becomes heavy only when the system carrying it isn't regulated enough to hold it. Highly aware people often try to fix their experience by reducing stimulation, avoiding people, avoiding complexity, avoiding emotional engagement. That can help temporarily. But it's not the solution, because awareness doesn't disappear, it waits. And when it comes back stronger. The real shift happens when awareness is no longer left alone to manage everything by itself. Highly aware people thrive when awareness is paired with containment. Containment doesn't mean control. It means having internal structures that allow perception to exist without overwhelming the nervous system. Think of it like this. Awareness is wide. It sees far. It picks up subtle signals. But without grounding, that width collapses inward. It turns into rumination, self-monitoring, mental fatigue. With grounding, awareness stays outward-facing. It becomes orientation, intuition, clarity. This is why highly aware people often feel better when they are engaged in meaningful work, in environments with emotional coherence, around people who are honest and regulated, contributing to something larger than themselves. Not because they're distracted, but because awareness finally has direction. Awareness without direction turns inward. Awareness with direction organizes reality. Another important shift happens when highly aware people stop treating regulation as relaxation. Relaxation is optional. Regulation is essential. You don't need to calm down all the time. You need to feel safe enough to let awareness soften when it doesn't need to be on high alert. Highly aware nervous systems are often alert not because of trauma alone, but because they learned early that vigilance was useful. It worked. You noticed things others missed. You adapted quickly. You understood dynamics early. But what worked for understanding doesn't always work for rest. So the system stays prepared, even when preparation is no longer necessary. Regulation teaches the system a new message. You don't have to monitor everything to be safe. This doesn't make awareness disappear, it makes it selective. And selectivity is the difference between exhaustion and mastery. When awareness is regulated, something subtle but powerful changes. You stop identifying with every thought you notice. You stop absorbing every emotional signal in the environment. You stop mistaking perception for responsibility. You still see, you still feel, but you're no longer carrying everything. This is where many highly aware people experience a quiet relief. Not because life got simpler, but because their relationship with perception changed. Awareness becomes a tool instead of a weight, and this has real-world effects. Highly aware people with regulation communicate more clearly, set boundaries without guilt, trust their intuition without overanalyzing it, engage deeply without burning out. Their sensitivity turns into precision, their depth turns into stability. They stop asking, "What's wrong with me?" and start asking, "How do I support the way my mind actually works?" That question changes everything, because awareness isn't meant to be fought, it's meant to be integrated. And integration doesn't mean becoming quieter, smaller, or simpler. It means becoming coherent. Highly aware people are not here to live fast. They're not built for constant noise, shallow urgency, or performative productivity. They are built to notice patterns, hold complexity, and perceive truth beneath the surface. But none of that works without care for the system doing the perceiving. This is why trying to be normal often feels wrong. Why pretending not to notice feels dishonest. Why forcing yourself into superficial rhythms drains you. Your mind wasn't designed for that. And here's the most important reframe of all. High awareness is not a problem to solve. It's a capacity to steward. When supported, awareness becomes one of the most grounded forms of intelligence there is. Not flashy, not loud, not superior, but deeply accurate. Highly aware people often sense this intuitively. They feel that something in them is meant to be used, not fixed. But without guidance, that sense can turn into frustration. Integration is what turns potential into function. And this is where the story closes. Not with answers, but with recognition. If this video resonated with you, it's not because you learned something new about psychology. It's because you recognized your own inner mechanics. You saw yourself reflected without judgment, without labels, without romanticizing or diminishing your experience. And that recognition matters, because being seen accurately is regulating. You don't need to become less aware. You need to live in a way that respects how awareness actually works. When you do, awareness stops feeling heavy. It stops collapsing inward, and it starts doing what it was always meant to do: bring clarity, create coherence, and support a life that feels internally aligned, not constantly managed. That's not enlightenment, that's psychological maturity. And for highly aware people, it's not the end of the journey. It's the point where awareness finally feels like home. Subscribe, stay close, and keep walking with us. This is Human Wave, where awakened minds rise into a life of wholeness and fulfillment.